And before I get to Alana, I just want to say that I appreciate how you attacked Nella. Nella could have very easily been a one note type of character, very easily, but you gave her breadth, you gave her depth, you gave her an unspoken kind of strength that I really appreciated in watching your performance. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's really good. Thank you. Thanks.
Yes, of course, of course. Now, there is a quote that I saw in the heard in the film spoken by Olivia. Olivia has so many quotes. She's like the quote queen. But there's this one quote that she has where she says, "Fear is like pain. If you endure it long enough, you become numb to it." Have either of you been in a place where you have feared something so incredibly strong that it paralyzed you, so to speak? And I'll speak with Alana first.
My goodness, that's such a good question. I feel like there are definitely times where I've felt that kind of anxiety. And I guess the only way to deal with it is to sit with it and be with it to get through it. But I don't know if I could find an actual moment to give you an example.
It's okay. It's okay. You don't have to give me an exact moment, but what you just said was beautiful because I couldn't have expressed that any better. Do you have anything to add to that, Tashan?
Yeah, I think the first thing that came to my mind was, I think everyone can relate to COVID. And I think the journey that we've had with COVID the last couple of years and the anxiety and fear that is grown in people, and some people couldn't even leave their homes after things are starting to kind of get back to normal again. And I know people that are still struggling to leave home and get back into work, and that's crippling, and it is. And so it's just like people are losing themselves and trying to find themselves again and trying to push past that fear. I think I've witnessed that and had moments of that myself in this journey with COVID and the pandemic.
Well, you guys, you divas were lucky because you had a job during the pandemic. Most of us would sit at home looking at the wall going, where is the check coming from? I'm just keeping it real. As actors, we're often looked at as not having a profession that is what people would consider a normal way or a viable means of making a living, right?
Yeah.
So Alicia is in a very precarious situation where she's kind of married into money. And so I was wondering, in preparation for your character as Alicia, were you able to bring that sensibility of that prejudice toward actors to bringing Alicia to life?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think definitely when I read the scripts and I got to know Alicia, I think one of the things I wanted to make sure was kind of understood that she really, I believe she really does love her husband. I think there is true love there. And I think that she's quite maybe slightly naive, and I don't think she's necessarily aware of maybe how people are viewing her. So I never really thought about it in that way, but that's so true.
Yeah, I'm very cerebral. I think about crazy stuff all the time. How familiar were y'all with the V.C. Andrews series of books before you started this project? Were you a fan? Had you never heard of her? And then once you started to, dig into it a little bit, were you like, oh no, she got a lot going on. There's like a lot of darkness, there's lust, there's deceit, there's a lot. She's got a lot going on. Go ahead, Tashan.
I tell you what, I hadn't heard of her books. I had heard of people online before saying things like, oh, that's a bit Flowers in the Attic. But it went over my head and I didn't know what that meant. When you see a meme and you don't know what it means. And then when I got the audition and I started reading the scripts and stuff, and then I realized, oh my goodness, okay, this is a thing. It's like an inside joke type thing as well. So I completely understood after I became part of the process. But my mum knew all of the books because she read them growing up, so she knew all about them. She could tell me actually a lot of things about it as well, and when I got the part, so it was completely new to me.
So me and your mom would get along great.
Yes, we would.
How about you, Alana?
You know, I think the same thing. My mum had read the books. I'd heard of it, but I hadn't read them myself. But yeah, you know, once the script came through and I sort of told my mum, she was so excited. She was like, oh my goodness, yes.
I bet she was. I'm excited for you. And last but not least, I want to talk to both of you ladies about working with Jemima, because Jemima is a beast. And she had to bring a different sensibility of that beastness in working with both of you. With Nella, that fine line of trying to be a friend, but not really. And she does the same thing to Alicia a little bit. And I was wondering if you ladies wouldn't mind speaking to that as we close things out. I'll let Alana go first, speaking about Olivia and Alicia.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Jemima is incredible. And I think what was so interesting about the Alicia and Olivia dynamic was, I guess, how close they could have been, how close in moments they were, and how quickly it all kind of fell apart. And I think both Olivia and Alicia are trying to look at the bigger picture, but I think, you know, ultimately that's what kind of tears them apart and turns them against each other, because they have very different ideas. And I guess maybe Alicia's just got maybe a slightly different outlook on life.
Yes, she does. And Tashan, as Olivia and Nella go through this really, it's a complicated relationship that they have. But at some point, Nella's like, you know what? It eventually comes down to, and it's undercover, but it eventually comes down to the race. It really does. And I just want you to speak to that for a second, if you might.
It's very, very painful and hurtful for Nella, because she almost tries to look out for her when she first arrives, and but always trying to remember that she works there and they have this boss employee dynamic thing going on, and then there's also the race thing going on that's very prevalent at the time. And I think Jemima does it so well, and I think that's why it made it easy for me as well to tap into and be as truthful to Nella as well, because a lot of Nella is Olivia and their relationship and how that blossoms and then doesn't. And I just think she does it so well of making you feel like she's letting you in and then reminding you, I'm your boss, and putting you back down to your place and like putting you back down a few pegs. And I think Nella found that really, really tough. And I think, those moments that you talked about where there were moments where she was just like, okay, but they were from those constant reminders that, oh, we're not actually friends. And I going back to what you were saying, your question, I think Jemima just did that so well and did it with ease, and it helped me in my process because she did that so well.
Well, you two ladies really did your thing in Flowers in the Attic. I can't wait for people to see it. I can't wait for people to see your performances. And I know you got a lot going on down there in Texas. And I thank you so much for carving out a little bit of time for me today to talk to you about it. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's lovely
so
to meet you.
Yeah.
It's great to meet y'all too. Bye.
Okay, take care. Bye. Bye.